channel. My name is Aisha, and today I'm going to be doing a list of some of my favorite books of all time. There's going to be no particular order, and some are more of just like a nostalgia factor. Not necessarily are they like the best books writing of all time, but they're just something that like hold a special place in my heart. And so I'm just gonna go over a few. There's a couple different genres that I have, but these are books that just stick out in my mind always, that I'm always thinking about and that I've like really enjoyed. And so I just wanted to go over a few of those. And then if you haven't checked any of them out, I would definitely suggest picking up any of these because they just bring so much joy to me and happiness that I figured I might as well share them. So the first book is one of those ones that like brings nostalgia for me, and it is going to be The Vampire Diaries by L.J. Smith. This is a book I read back in like my early high school days, and the vampire craze was crazy and everything, and I remember staying up super late one night, like on a school night, finishing this book and just reading it and enjoying it. The writing and all of that, definitely, like now if I read it, it would definitely be more juvenile, more not something that I would necessarily pick up, but I just love this book and it holds just a special place in my heart just because it was one of those books that like back in high school, like those days that like really sparked my reading into like high gear again, because I've always been like a huge reader. I was always at the library when I was younger. I always read the Mary-Kate and Ashley books and Goosebumps, and for a little while, you know, like junior high, when you hit puberty, it's like, oh, I only want to hang out with my friends, so I wasn't reading as much. But then I picked up this series and I kind of just fell back in love with reading. And so this is something I always think of, and I just love it a lot. This is actually a new cover for it. I have all of my originals packed up in storage right now just because I don't have a lot of room, but definitely this is one of my all-time like comfort reads, favorites, just because of everything that it brought me and just like all the joy that I felt and the obsession that I had with it when I first read it. So this is the first one that I wanted to mention because it's not necessarily the greatest writing or the greatest storytelling. Some of the characters can be kind of annoying, but it's just one of those books that brings joy to me every time that I see it. And the next couple I'm going to show are a few mangas that I love and that got me into reading manga and watching anime. So the first one is going to be Death Note. Death Note was just everything for me when I read it. Just the Shinigami, the main character finds a Death Note, and with the Death Note, if you write a name in this book, the person will die, and you can also give specifics like, oh, this person will get hit by a truck at this point in time, or everything like that. And so our main character finds it, and it comes along with the Shinigami, who are basically, they live in like a realm. It's like a demon realm. They are like Cho's incarnate, like everything. And so Ryuk, the like devil character, is there beside him, kind of egging him on to use it, and he decides he wants to use it for good and kill bad guys and criminals and stuff like that. And then everything just starts to go crazy from there, and the government and everyone is looking for him, and then they bring in this like crazy like sleuth detective to try and figure out who he is. And so it's just a really fascinating story on like the war on good and evil, and if what he is doing is actually good or not, or if he's actually really evil for still committing these crimes. So it's kind of like a moral debate. But this manga series is just one of my favorites. It's a shorter one, which I love because I'm not into huge series. So I've always enjoyed this series, and just like the dark aspects of it. I'm like a spooky Halloween girly, so I love that. And so definitely pick this up if you haven't read it. I know it's a very popular one, but it definitely is one of my all-time favorites. And then my next favorite manga is going to be Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Junji Ito, this was the first manga that I ever read and what made me fall in love with manga. I'm a huge horror fan, and all he writes is like the best. He's the king of horror, to be honest. Junji Ito, if you want horror and you haven't read Junji Ito, he is your man. He is the best #1 OG horror manga author. He's very popular. This is about a town that gets overrun by spirals and crazy things start happening, and I was just captivated from the second. His writing is just so crazy, like so many twists and turns and crazy things you wouldn't expect. And so if you love horror and you love manga, Junji Ito is your man, and you definitely need to pick it up. This is the newer edition of the book, and I just absolutely love it. So this book is always like displayed on my shelves because I love it just so much. And then the next one I want to get to is going to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is in a dark academia book. It is about a girl who goes to, is it Harvard or Princeton? And basically in this alternate universe, they have like pledges and stuff like that, like sororities and stuff like that. But a lot of these are like dark sororities, and she's basically in Ninth House, which helps to control these other houses and stuff like that from doing like different rituals or protecting them during rituals. There's ghosts, there's just a whole bunch of like crazy madness that goes on in this book, and I just loved every second of it. The main character, she can see ghosts, and that is why she is sought out by Harvard to begin with, and crazy shenanigans kind of follow, and like her mentor ends up disappearing, and it's her trying to kind of get him back and go through all the craziness that comes with this. I don't want to explain too much just because it is more of like a suspenseful type book. But if you love dark academia, this is one of my all-time favorites. And it's by Leigh Bardugo, so you can't go wrong when it comes to Leigh Bardugo. I loved this one and the second one a lot. I did a bunch of tabs in it because I loved it so much. So that is that one and why I love it. And then the next one is one that's been all over Book Talk and YouTube, and everyone loves it. So it's going to be no surprise that it is The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book gave me all of the feels. Like, I love dragons, I love romance, I love the characters in this. There's some like heartbreaking parts in it. The main character, she lives in a world where they go to this school, and you can pick a different area which you want to be in, and she wants to be in the scribes, which is basically they go over their lore and all of that and write down history and all the books that they have. But her mother is like the top dragon rider. She is part of the military, and she's like the #1 person when it comes to the military, and so she makes her go into the dragon riding quadrant, which is a really rough thing because half of the people that go into the dragon riding like courses, classes, or whatever don't come out alive, and there's only so many dragons and multiple students, so the dragons pick their own riders. And so you have that aspect of like student rivalry. The love aspect in this made me so happy. Like the main love interest, there's just something about him that I love so much, and it ended on a cliffhanger that was I just need the second book already. and I just love everything about this. And this is like one of those books with dragons in it that I actually really love, because a lot of dragon books are kind of just, oh, the normal, the same, but there's like so much more to this one. Like, once a dragon is chosen you, you get like this link so the dragons can talk to you in your mind. And like, also the main character is very frail. She has some kind of condition where it's easy for her to get hurt and all of that stuff, and so no one thinks she'll make it through because she's super weak. But you get to find out like what happens to her and the classes and the schooling, and the pacing is really fast, and I think that's what I loved about it. There was a lot of like action and suspense, and we didn't linger on like stuff that was like too overdone, like training or anything like that. So it moved really fast, and I think that's why I loved it so much, because I love like a fast-paced fantasy just to keep me interesting. And then of course this cover is just gorgeous with the dragons on the sprayed edges and in black, so I absolutely love that. But I don't think there's much more I can say on this, just because most know about this book at this point. And then another one that's very high on people's favorites list is going to be Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. And this is actually my favorite book from her. I know a lot of people criticize it for like the world building and it being slow in the beginning, but I love that because it's a high fantasy, and so I went into it expecting that. And our main character Bryce, at the beginning, she loses her best friends, and the guy is put away for the murder, but then we find out that there may be more to that, and more mysteries start happening, and then she starts to do some more digging into it, and a fallen angel named Hunt comes to help her with that, and the story just goes from there. I don't want to go into too much detail just because most people have read this, but it's definitely one of my favorite. Like, I love all the characters in this, and it's just really fun, and it was heartwarming, and I don't even know how to express how much I love this book. I think I read it in like 3 days, and this book isn't very short. But yeah, it was definitely one of my favorite from Sarah J Maas. I just feel like there was just more world development, more character development, and the storylines behind it were intriguing. There's heartbreaking moments in this. Like, the first part of the book, I seriously almost cried, even though I knew what was going to happen in the first part of the book, because it explains it in the synopsis of this book. But I was still like heartbroken, and I wanted to cry about it. But definitely, if you like the other Sarah J Maas books, definitely pick this one up. Definitely one of my all-time favorites from her. And another series that I love is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This one I read a while ago, so I need to reread it because I haven't finished the third book, but I really want to. And this one is about, it's set, I can't even think about it right. I'm losing my mind today. I don't know what is going on. Nari sets out on a journey with, let's see. Okay, so she does a lot of like performances and kind of like tricks people into thinking she's magic and all this stuff when she really is, but people don't really know that. And she ends up summoning Dara, yeah. And he is a Dijin warrior. He is like from old, and they go on this like crazy adventure, and just this, it's been so long since I read it, and I think I need to do a reread, but I just know my feelings attached to it, and just how fast I read this and how much I really enjoyed like the character and the development and the setting that it was in, because it's more of it's set in Cairo, and you don't get a whole lot of stories set like over there in like Cairo and stuff like that, and their mythology and all of that. So I definitely suggest reading this, even though I don't have too much to say about it, but I'm definitely going to reread it again. So hopefully I'll have a little bit more to say. I'll probably do a vlog when I reread it and give you a little bit more details, but I just know my feelings attached to this book and how much I enjoyed it while reading it. And so I will definitely give you guys an update again when I read this again and have a little bit more of a refresh. And then the next one is a YA book. It's The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is set in the 1920s, and our main character Evie is sent to New York after some stuff went down at her parents' house. And she gets kind of sucked into like the world of like supernatural, and she meets an unlikely group of friends, and just all this crazy stuff is going along in New York. And so they kind of just have to like figure out everything that's going on. Like, is it supernatural? There is just a lot of like detective elements. I absolutely love the love interest in this one. He's like super cute and like adorable. Like, those two together, they have the best banter, because at first they don't like each other, and then later on they start liking each other more. But definitely worth a pick up on this one. It is a YA, but I found this one super intriguing. I think I read this series within like a month, and it's just like a really fun classic YA. Like, it's probably like an urban fantasy series, but this one is definitely worth it giving a try. And then we are going to move on to a romance that I read last year that made me like fall in love with romance again. Because for a couple years before that, I wanted nothing to do with romance. Nothing. It was not my favorite at all. And then I picked up Credence by Penelope Douglas. This book is definitely controversial just because of the subject matter that is in this book. So at the beginning of the book, the main female character, her mother is sick with cancer, and her dad and her mom are super close, and they don't really give her as much attention. And so one night they decide that they want to take their lives, and so she is left without her parents. They were famous actors, and so she is sent to live with her estranged step uncle. Her dad's it's her dad's stepbrother, who they have no relationship with, anything like that. And so she gets sent off to Colorado to live with him and his two sons, and then craziness ensues. She ends up falling for all three of them. Different stuff happens between the three of them. And so it's definitely a very, very taboo romance, and it's definitely something that you need to go over the trigger warnings with this one. But I definitely found it, like, I don't know what it was about it, but I read this in a day and I absolutely loved it. Like, the character dynamics. I love our main female lead. She's just spunky and fun, and just the brothers, like the uncle's brothers, are really cool, and some crazy stuff happens. And also when she gets sent there, it is almost winter, and they get snowed in the winter every year because they live up in the mountains. So they're all basically snowed in together for a couple of months, and that's kind of like when everything happens. But just the feelings that I got from this book, I literally thought about it for like 6 months straight, and I still continue to think about it all the time. It's not as much as it was before, but it's definitely one of those books that I always look back on and I think about it. And so I'm thinking about doing a reread of this later this year, just because I want to be in those feelings again, and I want to annotate the whole thing. And just to show how much I actually like really did love this book, I have three separate copies. And I'm pretty sure one is a Spanish and then one is French. So this is the French version. I just love the mountains on the cover of this one and the green Credence on it. I'm a sucker for books with trees on the cover, and this one is just so beautiful to me. And so I had to have multiple copies of like one of my favorite books. Like I think this is sitting at like number 2 for favorite books. And then the next one is going to be the French edition, and it has one of the male characters on it, and there's just something about this cover that I'm just like, I had to have it because I just love this character and like the development that like he had. And so this cover just like called to me, and I had to have a third edition from this series. So I think this book is sitting at number 2. And so my last 2 books, well, technically that one's probably, yeah, that one's 2. But this is the only one that really has like a full ranking for my number 1 top favorite book as of the moment. Like nothing can compare to this. It just has everything that I love in books. And that is going to be My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a story about a girl who is obsessed with horror. And I am obsessed with horror. So the horror references in this book are insane. Like I have so many tabs in just this one edition of this book. Like I've read this twice already and highlighted so many like fun different quotes. So she is obsessed with horror and final girls, and a new girl moves to town, and she's convinced that she's going to be a final girl and something bad is going to happen. So she sets out to try and prepare her to become the final girl, and craziness ensues in this book, and like twists happen that I like wasn't expecting. And like she's more of like an unreliable narrator, and so you're like, there's probably really nothing going on. Is she just wanting this to happen because she's obsessed with horror movies? Is she wanting this to be the next big like horror movie and a new final girl type thing? Or is there actually really something going on in this town? And so this book just like has my whole heart. Like I could read it again tomorrow and be completely happy with it. And there's so many references from all of my all-time favorite horror movies. And I just think if you're a horror lover, you will absolutely 100% enjoy this book. Like I haven't had something give me these feelings for a while. And just because it brings in like reading and my favorite like genre, which is horror, and just a girl who knows just as much about slashers as I do. And so it's so much fun to just read this book and like see myself in the character in ways. And then for our last book, it's going to be the sequel to that, which is Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. So this one I can't go into too much detail just because it is the second book in like this series. But basically our main character has been gone and she comes back, and an escaped serial killer has found his way into their town. So more craziness ensues, and we just go along with our cast of characters. The main character from the first one's in it, and then the girl that she expects to be like a final girl, I believe, is in this one. I tabbed this one like crazy too. And anything by Stephen Graham Jones is just like a must, because he just has such good writing and I just love everything about it. So definitely pick him up if you haven't. But I think that's going to be all for today's video. Those are just some of my favorites that I like think about all the time. I definitely have more favorites, but those are some of my top favorites. And so I really hope you liked this video, and I hope you got some good suggestions for yourself. And I will see you guys in the next video. Happy reading!